I thought I had seen the worst of family favoritism until I walked into my parents' basement that Tuesday evening and found my 7-year-old twins sleeping on ancient camping mattresses. Emma clutched a threadbare blanket while Ethan curled against the concrete wall, both shivering in the damp chill. Above us, I could hear Madison's laughter echoing from what used to be Emma's bedroom. My heart shattered as I realized my parents had literally banished my children to the basement to make room for their precious granddaughter. Standing there watching my babies try to sleep in that cold, unwelcoming space, I made a decision that would change everything. I didn't argue or plead. I simply whispered, "Get your backpacks." 6 months earlier, my life had been chaotic but manageable. Working 2 jobs to keep my family afloat meant leaving the house at 6 in the morning for my position at Henderson Medical Billing and returning home at 11 at night after my dinner shift at Rosie's Diner. The routine was exhausting, but it provided stability for Emma and Ethan while we lived with my parents Carol and Robert in their sprawling ranch house on Maple Street. Everything changed when my sister Diana arrived with her suitcases and her 9-year-old daughter Madison. Diana's marriage to her college sweetheart had crumbled spectacularly, leaving her jobless and desperate. She showed up at our parents' doorstep with tear-stained cheeks and a story about her ex-husband's cruelty that had our mother wrapping her in protective arms within minutes. Carol, a recently retired elementary school teacher, immediately fussed over Madison like she was made of spun glass. Robert, whose construction career had ended with a back injury 3 years prior, declared that his youngest daughter needed family support during this difficult transition. Within a week, Diana had claimed the guest bedroom, while Madison settled into what had been our family's shared space in the living room. The changes started small. Madison needed quiet time for homework, so Emma and Ethan were asked to play outside even when it rained. Madison was a picky eater, so our family dinners shifted to accommodate her preferences for chicken nuggets and macaroni, while my twins learned to eat whatever was left. Madison had trouble sleeping, so the television volume dropped to a whisper after 7 in the evening. Diana found part-time work at a trendy salon downtown, but her schedule remained flexible compared to my rigid double shifts. She became Madison's dedicated advocate, explaining to our parents how traumatic the divorce had been for her daughter and how much stability she needed. Soon, Carol was driving Madison to ballet lessons, while my children walked to their after-school program. Robert installed a small television in Madison's corner of the living room, while Emma and Ethan shared an old tablet for their educational games. The breaking point came when Madison complained about sharing space. Diana suggested that her daughter needed her own room to process the family upheaval properly. Our parents nodded sympathetically, and within days, Emma's carefully arranged bedroom, with its pale yellow walls and butterfly decorations, became Madison's private sanctuary. My daughter was told she could share Ethan's smaller room temporarily, but temporary stretched into weeks and weeks, became months. Madison acquired Emma's desk, her bookshelf, and eventually even her favorite stuffed animals because they matched the room's decor better. When I protested, Carol explained that Madison was going through such a difficult time and needed pretty things to help her heal. Diana added that my children were resilient and would adapt quickly. The final insult came when Madison declared that Ethan's room was too small for both twins. Robert, eager to solve the problem, brightened as he remembered the basement's finished recreation room. He spent a weekend moving furniture downstairs, installing better lighting, and declaring the space perfect for active children who needed room to play. I returned from my evening shift that night to find my children's belongings packed in garbage bags beside the basement stairs. Diana explained that they had been noisy during Madison's online tutoring session and drastic measures were necessary. My parents stood behind her, nodding gravely about the importance of educational success. Standing at the top of those wooden stairs looking down at my twins arranging their clothes in milk crates, I felt something break inside my chest. Emma looked up with forced brightness, asking if their new room was like a camping adventure. Ethan quietly organized his toy cars on a cardboard box, accepting this new reality with the resignation that broke my heart completely. That was the moment I realized my parents didn't see Emma and Ethan as their grandchildren anymore. They had become inconveniences to be managed, obstacles to Madison's comfort and Diana's recovery. My children had been erased from their own home, relegated to the basement like unwanted storage. The basement became a prison disguised as accommodation. Robert had installed a lock on the door, claiming it was for safety reasons, but I noticed how Diana would test the handle when she thought no one was watching. The space itself was dry and clean, but it lacked the warmth of a real bedroom. Concrete floors remained cold even with area rugs, and the single window sat too high for Emma and Ethan to see outside properly. Diana's criticism of my parenting intensified once my children were out of sight. She complained that they were too loud during breakfast, too messy during dinner, and too energetic when Madison was trying to relax. Carol began preparing elaborate lunches for Madison while handing my twins basic peanut butter sandwiches. When I questioned this disparity, my mother sighed dramatically about how picky children needed special attention during difficult transitions. Madison's demands grew bolder with each passing week. She claimed ownership of the good scissors for school projects, the comfortable cushions for television watching, and even the front seat of Robert's truck during errands. Emma and Ethan learned to ask for nothing and expect less, their requests dismissed as interruptions to more important family business. The evening routine became a careful dance of avoidance. Diana would bathe Madison in the main bathroom, while my children waited for permission to wash quickly in the basement utility sink. Madison received bedtime stories and elaborate tucking-in ceremonies, while Emma and Ethan descended to their makeshift beds after hurried goodnights. Working double shifts meant leaving the house before my children woke and returning after they had fallen asleep most nights. I trusted my parents to provide basic care, but subtle signs revealed how misguided that trust had become. Emma's favorite sweater disappeared only to reappear in Madison's closet because it looked better with her complexion. Ethan's building blocks vanished from the basement, relocated to Madison's room for her engineering projects. The school began sending notes about my children's changing behavior. Emma, once outgoing and confident, became withdrawn and hesitant to participate in class discussions. Ethan developed nervous habits, chewing his fingernails until they bled and stammering when asked direct questions. Their teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, expressed concern about their obvious fatigue and requested a parent conference that I couldn't attend due to work obligations. Diana volunteered to represent me at the school meeting, returning with reports that Emma and Ethan were struggling academically because of instability at home. She suggested they needed more structure and discipline, recommendations that our parents embraced enthusiastically. My children's bedtime moved earlier, their television privileges disappeared, and their outdoor playtime became contingent on completing household chores that seemed to multiply daily. Carol's transformation from loving grandmother to stern disciplinarian happened gradually but completely. She criticized Emma's table manners while praising Madison's politeness. She scolded Ethan for leaving toys in the living room while allowing Madison to spread art projects across the dining room table. The woman who had once sung lullabies to my babies now spoke to them with cold efficiency, treating them like burdensome house guests, overstaying their welcome. Robert's distance felt equally devastating. The grandfather who had taught Emma to ride a bicycle and helped Ethan build elaborate train tracks now barely acknowledged their presence. He drove Madison to dance recitals and soccer practices, while my children walked everywhere or relied on unreliable public transportation. When Ethan asked to help with household repairs, Robert claimed the work was too dangerous for clumsy little boys. The final straw came during Madison's 9th birthday celebration. Diana organized an elaborate party in the backyard, complete with a bounce house catered food and professional entertainment. Emma and Ethan watched from the basement window as their cousins celebrated with classmates, neighbors, and extended family members who barely glanced in their direction. When I arrived home from work that evening, I found my children sitting on their basement beds, quietly eating leftover cake that Carol had brought down as an afterthought. The contrast between Madison's joy-filled celebration upstairs and my twins' resigned acceptance downstairs crystallized everything wrong with our living situation. Emma looked up with hollow eyes that belonged on a much older child. Ethan had stopped asking questions about fairness weeks ago, accepting his diminished status with heartbreaking maturity. They were learning lessons about worthlessness that would scar them forever if I didn't intervene immediately. That night, lying on my narrow bed in the basement corner listening to my children's restless sleep, I realized that staying meant sacrificing their self-esteem, their confidence, and their fundamental belief that they deserved love and respect. My parents had made their choice clear, and continuing to hope for change meant enabling their cruelty. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon when I came home early from my morning shift due to a computer system failure at the medical billing office. The house seemed unusually quiet as I unlocked the front door expecting to find my children engaged in their usual after-school activities. Instead, I discovered them huddled together in the basement, Emma's shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The scene that greeted me upstairs explained everything. Madison sat at the kitchen table surrounded by art supplies and half-completed science fair projects, while Carol assisted with cutting and gluing. Diana lounged on the living room couch painting her fingernails while chatting on her phone about weekend plans. Robert watched television in his recliner, occasionally chuckling at comedy shows. When I asked about Emma and Ethan's whereabouts, Carol barely looked up from Madison's poster board. She explained that the twins had been too disruptive during Madison's important homework session, so they were confined to the basement until dinner. Diana added that children needed to learn respect for others' educational pursuits, especially during such crucial developmental years. I descended those basement stairs with growing dread, finding my 7-year-olds sitting cross-legged on their camping mattresses, sharing a sleeve of saltine crackers they had discovered in an old storage box. Emma's eyes were red from crying, and Ethan clutched his stomach, clearly hungry. When I asked about lunch, Emma whispered that Carol had been too busy helping Madison to prepare anything for them. The details of their day emerged slowly, each revelation more heartbreaking than the last. Madison had complained about their morning chatter during her online tutoring session, prompting Diana to banish them immediately after breakfast. They had spent 6 hours alone in the basement, emerging only to use the bathroom under strict supervision and time limits. Emma's tears intensified as she described Carol's harsh words about intelligence and worthiness. My mother had apparently explained that some children were naturally smarter and more deserving of attention, suggesting that Emma and Ethan needed to accept their limitations gracefully. The psychological damage of those words hit me like physical blows. Ethan's quiet revelation proved even more devastating. He admitted that they had been eating hidden snacks for several days because regular meals had become increasingly scarce. While Madison enjoyed elaborate breakfasts and packed lunches, my children received minimal portions and leftovers. They had learned to save crackers and granola bars from school programs, hoarding food like refugees in their own home. Confronting my parents that evening yielded only more cruelty disguised as reason. Carol explained that favoritism wasn't intentional, but natural, claiming that Madison's exceptional abilities and recent trauma required extra attention. Diana supported this narrative, suggesting that my children's jealousy stemmed from their inability to match their cousin's achievements. Robert's response cut deepest of all. He stated bluntly that Emma and Ethan should feel grateful for shelter and basic care, reminding me that plenty of children lived in worse conditions. His dismissive tone suggested that my concerns were frivolous complaints from an ungrateful daughter who failed to appreciate family generosity. The gaslighting intensified when I mentioned documentation of their mistreatment. Diana accused me of being paranoid and vindictive, suggesting that my work stress was affecting my judgment. Carol worried aloud about my mental stability, questioning whether someone with such distorted perceptions should be responsible for child-rearing decisions. Their united front against me revealed careful coordination. Every criticism I raised was met with prepared responses that painted me as the problematic family member. They had crafted a narrative where Madison was the innocent victim requiring protection, while my children were disruptive burdens requiring management. The threats became explicit when I mentioned seeking outside perspective. Robert warned that family services might view my concerns as evidence of instability, suggesting that single mothers who couldn't provide adequate housing might lose custody entirely. Diana supported this intimidation, claiming knowledge of similar cases where children were removed from conflicted family situations. Sleep became impossible that night as I processed the full scope of their manipulation. My parents weren't simply favoring Madison over Emma and Ethan. They were actively working to undermine my relationship with my children while positioning themselves as the responsible adults managing a chaotic situation. The psychological warfare extended to my twins, who began questioning whether they deserved better treatment. Emma asked why Madison received new clothes while she wore hand-me-downs. Ethan wondered if he was really as clumsy and loud as everyone claimed. Their innocent questions revealed how effectively my family was destroying their self-worth. Emma's bedwetting resumed for the first time since toddlerhood, a clear stress response that my parents dismissed as attention-seeking behavior. Ethan developed nervous tics, particularly when Diana criticized his activities or Carol corrected his mannerisms. Both children became hypervigilant around adults, carefully monitoring facial expressions and tone changes to avoid triggering disapproval. The isolation felt complete. My extended family remained unaware of the basement living arrangements, believing Diana's carefully crafted stories about temporary housing adjustments during our difficult period. Friends from work heard only vague references to multi-generational living challenges, not the specific cruelties being inflicted daily. Standing in that basement, watching my children adapt to increasingly harsh conditions with heartbreaking resilience, I understood that hoping for family redemption meant sacrificing their psychological well-being. They were learning to accept mistreatment as normal, developing survival strategies that would handicap their future relationships. The moment of clarity came when Emma asked if other children lived in basements because they weren't smart enough for regular bedrooms. Her innocent question revealed how thoroughly my family had convinced her that she deserved less than basic human dignity. That was when I knew that staying would damage my children beyond repair. My investigation began accidentally during a sleepless night when I couldn't stop thinking about Emma's question regarding her intelligence. While searching for old report cards to prove my daughter's academic capabilities, I discovered a stack of unopened mail hidden behind Diana's jewelry box in the guest bathroom. The return addresses included my children's school, the county family services office, and most shocking of all, multiple letters from Jake, my ex-husband. Jake and I had divorced 3 years earlier due to his struggles with alcohol and job instability, but our separation had been relatively amicable. He had moved to Phoenix for a construction job, maintaining sporadic contact with the twins through phone calls and occasional gifts. Or so I believed. The letters revealed a completely different story. Jake had been writing monthly for over a year, describing his successful completion of a rehabilitation program and steady employment with a residential construction company. He had been promoted to crew supervisor and earned enough to rent a 3-bedroom apartment in a family-friendly neighborhood with excellent schools. More importantly, he had been sending monthly support payments to my parents' address, believing that I was receiving the money to help with the children's expenses. The canceled checks showed amounts far exceeding what he had previously contributed, totaling nearly $3,000 over the past 6 months. My parents had been cashing these payments without my knowledge, while Diana convinced them that Jake remained unreliable and potentially dangerous. The school letters contained progress reports and requests for parent conferences that I had never received. Emma and Ethan's grades remained solid, despite their recent behavioral changes contradicting Diana's claims about academic struggles. Their teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had requested meetings to discuss supportive strategies for children experiencing family transitions, not disciplinary problems as Diana had reported. Family Services had sent notification of Jake's petition to modify our custody agreement, requesting regular visitation rights and increased support responsibilities. The documentation showed his completion of court-mandated counseling, stable employment verification, and character references from supervisors and program coordinators. He had been trying to rebuild his relationship with Emma and Ethan for months, while I remained completely unaware of his efforts. Diana's manipulation became clear as I pieced together the timeline. She had been intercepting all communication from Jake while feeding our parents fabricated stories about his continued irresponsibility. When Jake called the house phone, Diana answered with reports that I was either working or unavailable, promising to relay messages that never reached me. The financial deception cut even deeper. Jake's support payments had been substantial enough to significantly improve my children's living conditions, but instead funded Madison's ballet lessons, new wardrobe, and elaborate birthday celebration. Diana had convinced our parents that accepting Jake's money without informing me was protective, preventing me from making poor financial decisions or rekindling a dangerous relationship. Carol's participation in the deception surprised me most. My mother, who had always prided herself on honesty and direct communication, had been lying to my face for months. She knew about Jake's rehabilitation success, his stable employment, and his desire to reconnect with his children, yet continued supporting Diana's narrative about his unsuitability as a father. Robert's involvement felt more predictable, but equally hurtful. He had cashed Jake's support checks, personally depositing the money into an account that funded household improvements and Madison's activities. When I discovered receipts for Madison's dance costumes and art supplies purchased with money intended for Emma and Ethan's care, my father's betrayal became undeniable. The custody modification papers revealed Jake's specific requests, alternate weekend visitation, shared holiday arrangements, and regular phone contact with established schedules. He had provided detailed plans for the children's visits, including enrollment in local activities and introduction to his supportive friend network in Phoenix. Everything suggested genuine commitment to rebuilding his role as their father. Diana's sabotage extended beyond intercepting communications. She had been sharing selective information about my life with extended family members, portraying me as overwhelmed and struggling, while positioning herself as the stable influence keeping our family together. Aunts and uncles who might have offered support believed I was managing well with my parents' help, unaware of the actual dynamics destroying my children's well-being. The psychological manipulation proved most sophisticated. Diana had convinced our parents that shielding me from Jake's contact attempts was protective, preventing emotional setbacks that might affect my work performance or parenting capabilities. She portrayed herself as the responsible sister managing difficult family communications while I focused on financial stability. Her control extended to my children's perceptions of their father. When Emma and Ethan asked about Jake, Diana provided vague responses about his busy work schedule and difficulty maintaining contact. She never explicitly criticized him, instead, creating impressions of disinterest and abandonment that reinforced their feelings of unworthiness. The documentation revealed Jake's progression from desperate pleas for contact to formal legal action. His early letters begged for phone calls and updates about the children's activities. Later correspondence showed his decision to pursue official custody modification when informal attempts failed. His most recent letter mentioned hiring a family attorney to establish his parental rights properly. Discovering the hidden mail felt like uncovering buried treasure, each letter providing crucial evidence of my family's systematic deception. Jake's transformation from the unreliable man I had divorced to the committed father seeking reconnection offered hope for my children's future while exposing the depth of my family's betrayal. The financial theft alone provided grounds for confrontation, but the psychological manipulation represented something far more sinister. Diana hadn't simply hidden Jake's letters. She had orchestrated an elaborate fiction that kept me isolated from potential support while maintaining my dependence on my parents' conditional assistance. Standing in that bathroom surrounded by evidence of months of careful deception, I realized that my family's treatment of Emma and Ethan was just the visible symptom of a deeper conspiracy to control my life entirely. They had systematically eliminated my options while positioning themselves as my only source of stability and support. Armed with the devastating evidence of my family's deception, I knew that confrontation without preparation would only lead to more sophisticated gaslighting and possibly complete loss of access to my children. Instead, I began constructing an escape plan with the methodical precision of a military operation, using my discovered leverage strategically while maintaining the illusion of compliance. My first priority involved contacting Jake directly using a prepaid phone purchased during my lunch break at the medical billing office. His voice cracked with emotion when he heard my voice, immediately asking about Emma and Ethan's well-being and expressing confusion about our lack of communication. Learning that I had never received any of his letters or support payments ignited his anger, but he channeled that fury into practical action rather than empty threats. Jake's living situation had indeed transformed dramatically. His apartment complex featured a playground, community pool, and proximity to highly rated elementary schools. He had furnished a bedroom for the twins with bunk beds, educational toys, and art supplies, maintaining hope for their visits, despite months of silence. His employment with Morrison Construction had progressed to assistant project manager, providing stable income and comprehensive health insurance that could cover Emma and Ethan. More importantly, Jake had developed a support network of colleagues and neighbors who understood single parenting challenges. His sponsor from the rehabilitation program remained actively involved, providing accountability and guidance for major decisions. The transformation from the man I had divorced to this focused, responsible father seemed genuine based on our extended conversations and his detailed plans for rebuilding our co-parenting relationship. Jake's attorney, Patricia Hendricks, specialized in custody modifications involving parental rehabilitation. She explained that Jake's documentation exceeded typical requirements for restored visitation rights, including verified employment, stable housing, completion of counseling programs, and character references from multiple sources. The intercepted letters and diverted support payments provided additional evidence of interference with parental rights that strengthened his legal position considerably. Attorney Hendricks also referred me to Margaret Chen, a family law specialist who could address the property ownership issue I had discovered while searching through hidden documents. The house deed revealed that my grandmother's inheritance had established me as a co-owner of my parents' property, a fact they had concealed for years, while treating me as a dependent family member rather than a legal stakeholder in our living situation. Margaret's research uncovered that my ownership percentage was substantial enough to force property sale or buyout arrangements if I chose to pursue legal action. My parents had been claiming full ownership while using my portion of property taxes and maintenance costs to subsidize their lifestyle, essentially stealing from me for years while maintaining their position as generous providers of family housing. The financial documentation painted an even grimmer picture of systematic theft. Diana had been accessing my parents' bank account to fund her personal expenses, while Jake's support payments subsidized household costs that should have been shared responsibilities. Madison's elaborate lifestyle was funded entirely by money intended for Emma and Ethan's care, creating a perverse situation where my children's deprivation directly enabled their cousin's privilege. Employment research revealed opportunities for advancement within my field that wouldn't require double shifts or extended evening hours. Henderson Medical Billing had an opening for a senior accounts coordinator that would provide better income with standard business hours, allowing me to be present for my children's daily routines. My supervisor, Linda Walsh, had been impressed with my reliability despite personal challenges and supported my application for the promotion. Linda's understanding of my situation extended beyond professional appreciation. As a single mother herself, she recognized signs of family stress and offered both practical support and emotional encouragement. Her willingness to provide employment references and flexible scheduling during my transition period gave me confidence that financial independence was achievable without sacrificing my children's needs. Apartment hunting required careful secrecy, but I identified several options within walking distance of Emma and Ethan's current school. The units were modest, but offered separate bedrooms, adequate natural light, and access to community amenities like playgrounds and library programs. The security deposits and moving costs were manageable with Jake's support and my anticipated salary increase. Most importantly, I began documenting everything. Photographs of the basement sleeping arrangements, copies of the intercepted mail records of Jake's support payments, and detailed journals of daily interactions created an irrefutable archive of my family's mistreatment. Emma and Ethan unknowingly helped by describing their daily experiences, providing child perspectives that revealed the psychological impact of their living conditions. The documentation process also included medical records showing Emma's regression and Ethan's stress-related symptoms. Their pediatrician, Dr. Sarah Michaels, had noted concerns about anxiety indicators during routine checkups, but attributed them to typical divorce adjustment issues. Providing her with complete context about their living situation would establish professional observations of environmental factors affecting their development. Building relationships with the twins' teachers became crucial for establishing educational continuity. Mrs. Rodriguez expressed relief when I finally attended a parent conference sharing detailed observations about both children's academic performance and social interactions. Her documentation of their behavioral changes provided professional perspective on the impact of their home environment. The escape plan required precise timing to prevent interference or retaliation. Diana's work schedule at the salon was irregular, but she typically spent Thursday evenings with friends, providing opportunity for undisturbed packing. Robert's weekly poker game offered additional cover, while Carol's volunteering at the library created windows of unsupervised access to important documents and belongings. Jake's coordination proved essential for logistics beyond emotional support. His truck could transport furniture and boxes in a single trip, while his time flexibility allowed for strategic timing that avoided confrontation. Patricia Hendricks had prepared legal documentation establishing his visitation rights immediately upon our relocation, preventing my parents from using distance as grounds for restricting access. The psychological preparation proved most challenging. Emma and Ethan had adapted to their diminished status with heartbreaking acceptance, rarely complaining about unfair treatment or expressing desires for better conditions. Rebuilding their sense of worthiness and expectation for respect would require patience and consistency that their current environment actively undermined. My own emotional preparation involved accepting that my parents' love had always been conditional upon my compliance with their expectations. Leaving meant severing relationships that had defined my identity since childhood, but staying meant sacrificing my children's psychological development for the illusion of family unity that had already been shattered by favoritism and manipulation. The plan's success depended on maintaining complete secrecy while gathering resources and establishing alternative support systems. Every conversation with Jake, meeting with attorneys, or apartment viewing required careful coordination to avoid detection. Diana's suspiciousness had increased recently, and any premature discovery would trigger countermeasures that could complicate our departure or endanger the children's safety. Diana's discovery of my escape plans came at the worst possible moment. I had been careless with apartment listings, leaving them visible on my phone while rushing to get ready for work. She discovered them when borrowing my charger, and her reaction was swift and vicious. The confrontation erupted that evening when I returned from my shift at Rosie's Diner. Diana stood in the living room like a prosecutor, flanked by our parents holding printed copies of text messages between Jake and me discussing custody arrangements. Her face was twisted with rage, but her voice remained coldly controlled as she presented her evidence of my supposed betrayal. She accused me of planning to steal the family home, claiming that I intended to force our elderly parents into financial ruin through legal manipulation. According to Diana's narrative, I was collaborating with Jake to gain revenge against the family that had selflessly supported me during my difficult divorce. She painted our reconnection as a dangerous mistake that would expose Emma and Ethan to the same instability that had originally destroyed our marriage. Carol's reaction was immediate and devastating. My mother, who had raised me to value honesty above all else, called me manipulative and ungrateful. She expressed horror that I would consider removing her grandchildren from their loving home environment, suggesting that my selfishness was causing irreparable damage to family relationships. Her words felt like physical blows, each accusation designed to maximize emotional injury. Robert's response was more measured but equally crushing. He explained that I had misunderstood property ownership documents, claiming that my grandmother's inheritance had been a loan rather than a gift. According to his version of events, I had never possessed legal ownership rights, and my current living situation represented charitable family support rather than legitimate housing entitlement. Diana's trump card was her threat to contact family services immediately. She claimed that reuniting Emma and Ethan with their alcoholic father constituted child endangerment regardless of Jake's supposed rehabilitation. She had prepared documentation of his previous arrests, employment instability, and our tumultuous divorce proceedings, presenting a case that portrayed him as fundamentally unsuitable for parental responsibilities. The psychological warfare escalated when Diana accused me of mental instability. She suggested that my discovery of hidden letters indicated paranoid behavior, claiming that I had been secretly reading private family correspondence and constructing elaborate conspiracy theories to justify my anger about reasonable household arrangements. According to her narrative, my perception of favoritism toward Madison was evidence of jealousy and resentment that made me unfit for parenting decisions. Carol supported this character assassination, enthusiastically expressing concern about my emotional regulation and decision-making capabilities. She wondered aloud whether someone experiencing such severe psychological stress should be responsible for children's welfare, suggesting that temporary custody changes might be necessary until I received proper mental health treatment. The united front they presented felt overwhelming and carefully orchestrated. Every point I raised was countered with prepared responses that twisted my legitimate concerns into evidence of personal failings. They had anticipated this confrontation and developed strategies to maintain control while portraying themselves as reasonable adults managing a family crisis. But I was no longer the desperate single mother who had accepted their charity gratefully. Months of documentation and legal consultation had prepared me for exactly this scenario. When Diana threatened to involve family services, I calmly produced copies of Jake's support payments that my parents had been stealing. When Carol questioned my mental stability, I presented medical records showing Emma and Ethan's stress-related symptoms that correlated directly with their basement housing arrangement. The property ownership documents were authentic and legally binding as confirmed by Margaret Chen's research. My parents' claims about loans rather than inheritance were lies designed to maintain their psychological control. The deed clearly established my co-ownership rights, and their years of concealment constituted fraud that strengthened my legal position considerably. Jake's rehabilitation was thoroughly documented and verified by multiple professional sources. Diana's outdated information about his struggles was irrelevant compared to current evidence of stability and commitment. Patricia Hendricks had prepared responses to every concern Diana raised, including supervised visitation arrangements that would gradually rebuild the father-child relationship safely. The most powerful evidence involved Diana's own deception and financial manipulation. The intercepted letters proved systematic interference with parental rights, while the diverted support payments demonstrated theft that had directly harmed my children. Her claims about protecting family stability were undermined by evidence of her calculated campaign to isolate me from potential support systems. As I methodically dismantled each accusation with documented evidence, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. Diana's confident accusations became desperate denials. Carol's moral superiority crumbled into defensive justifications, and Robert's authoritative pronouncements revealed themselves as empty threats lacking legal foundation. The turning point came when Jake arrived unexpectedly, with Patricia Hendricks responding to my emergency text about the confrontation. His calm professionalism contrasted sharply with my family's emotional manipulation, and his legal documentation immediately neutralized Diana's threats about custody interference. Patricia's presence transformed the discussion from family drama into a serious legal matter with potential criminal implications. Diana's final desperate gambit involved claiming that Jake's arrival proved our conspiracy against the family's interests. She accused us of planning this confrontation to intimidate elderly parents into signing over property rights, portraying herself as the only family member protecting our parents from financial exploitation. But Jake's measured response destroyed her narrative completely. He explained that he sought only legitimate visitation rights and fair support arrangements, with no interest in property disputes or family conflicts. His focus remained entirely on rebuilding relationships with Emma and Ethan, not participating in broader family dysfunction that had preceded his involvement. Patricia's legal analysis was devastating to their position. The intercepted mail diverted payments and documented mistreatment of the children created liability exposure that extended beyond family disagreements into potential criminal charges. Diana's threats about family services could easily backfire when investigators discovered the basement living arrangements and systematic favoritism that had prompted my departure plans. The confrontation ended with my parents' stunned silence as they processed the legal implications of their actions. Diana's elaborate manipulation had unraveled, completely exposing her as the primary architect of family dysfunction rather than its concerned observer. Her claims about protecting everyone's interests were revealed as self-serving lies designed to maintain her privileged position. Robert's final acknowledgement that they had made mistakes felt hollow after months of gaslighting and deliberate cruelty. Carol's tears seemed motivated more by fear of consequences than genuine remorse for her grandchildren's suffering. Neither parent offered the immediate changes or accountability that might have salvaged family relationships. Standing in that living room surrounded by the wreckage of years of lies and manipulation, I felt the last vestiges of doubt about my decision disappear completely. My children deserved parents who valued their worth unconditionally, not grandparents who treated them as burdensome afterthoughts to be managed and hidden away. The next morning, I stood in Emma and Ethan's basement bedroom one final time, watching them pack their belongings with quiet efficiency that broke and mended my heart simultaneously. They had learned not to expect much from life, carrying their few precious possessions in small backpacks, like refugees preparing for another displacement. But this time, they were leaving toward hope instead of running from rejection. Our new apartment was a modest 2-bedroom unit in Sunrise Gardens, a family-friendly complex 15 minutes from their current school. Emma squealed with genuine joy when she saw her own bedroom, complete with a window overlooking the playground and walls she could decorate however she wanted. Ethan spent 20 minutes testing the overhead light switch, amazed that he could control his environment without asking permission. Jake's presence during the move transformed what could have been traumatic separation into exciting adventure. He arrived with a truck full of furniture purchased specifically for the twins' matching bedroom sets, a small dining table, and even a gaming console for family movie nights. His careful attention to their preferences, from Emma's love of purple to Ethan's fascination with dinosaurs, showed genuine commitment to rebuilding authentic relationships. The children's reunion with their father unfolded naturally despite years of separation. Emma cautiously accepted his invitation to help arrange her new bedroom furniture, gradually warming to his patient encouragement and silly jokes. Ethan remained reserved initially, but Jake's knowledge of his son's favorite animals and patient willingness to build elaborate dinosaur scenarios eventually earned shy smiles and tentative conversation. My promotion to senior accounts coordinator at Henderson Medical Billing provided both financial stability and schedule flexibility that made real parenting possible. Linda Walsh's mentorship extended beyond professional development, offering practical advice about work-life balance and single parenting that helped me navigate my newfound independence. The 40-hour work week meant being present for homework, help bedtime stories and morning conversations that had been impossible during my double-shift survival period. Jake's commitment to co-parenting exceeded every expectation I had dared to maintain. He enrolled in a co-parenting class, voluntarily established regular therapy sessions with Dr. Patricia Moore to address his past mistakes, and created detailed communication protocols that prioritized the children's needs above our adult complications. His weekend visits became highlights that Emma and Ethan anticipated, eagerly filled with age-appropriate adventures and consistent affection. The legal resolution of our family conflicts unfolded with surprising swiftness once Patricia Hendricks filed formal complaints about the intercepted mail and diverted support payments. Diana faced potential felony charges for mail theft and fraud, motivating her cooperation with financial restitution and agreement to supervised distance from our custody arrangements. My parents agreed to buy out my property ownership share, providing additional resources for establishing long-term stability. Dr. Sarah Michaels documented remarkable improvements in both children's physical and emotional health within 6 weeks of our relocation. Emma's bedwetting disappeared, completely replaced by confident requests for independence and decision-making participation. Ethan's nervous habits faded as he developed secure routines and predictable expectations about adult behavior and family stability. School performance reflected their psychological recovery dramatically. Mrs. Rodriguez noted increased participation, improved focus, and renewed enthusiasm for learning activities that had been absent during their basement months. Emma joined the school choir while Ethan discovered talent for creative writing that flourished in an environment where his ideas were valued and encouraged. The apartment complex community embraced us immediately, providing social connections that had been missing during our isolation with my family. Neighbor families included other single parents, blended households, and traditional couples who welcomed new friendships without judgment about our circumstances. Emma and Ethan developed playmate relationships that reinforced their understanding of normal childhood experiences and expectations. My relationship with my parents remained permanently altered, though not entirely severed. Carol's attempts at reconciliation felt hollow, without acknowledgement of the psychological damage her favoritism had caused, while Robert's stilted conversations avoided mentioning the children entirely. They had lost the privilege of regular grandparent access through their choices, and rebuilding trust would require consistent demonstration of change that seemed unlikely given their defensive responses. Diana's consequences extended beyond legal penalties to social isolation within our extended family and community. Word of her manipulation spread through family networks, destroying relationships she had carefully cultivated while undermining mine. Her part-time employment became even more precarious when salon clients learned about her legal troubles, creating financial pressure that forced lifestyle changes and geographic relocation. Madison's adjustment to losing her privileged status proved challenging, but ultimately beneficial. Without constant adult attention and material indulgence, she began developing age-appropriate social skills and genuine interests beyond performance for approval. Diana's forced accountability created opportunities for more authentic mother-daughter relationship building, though the transition involved considerable drama and resistance. 6 months after our departure, I received an unexpected visit from Carol, who arrived bearing gifts for Emma and Ethan's birthdays. Her demeanor was subdued and apologetic, though her words remained carefully neutral about responsibility and regret. The children accepted her presence politely, but showed none of their previous eagerness for grandmother attention, having learned that adult love should be consistent and unconditional. The conversation with my mother was brief and awkward, filled with careful avoidance of topics that might trigger conflict or emotion. She asked about school performance and extracurricular activities, but avoided mentioning their basement months or current happiness levels. Her discomfort with their confident responses and direct eye contact suggested awareness that they had changed in ways that highlighted her previous failures. Jake's integration into our family routine continued evolving positively, with formal custody arrangements expanding to include weeknight dinners and shared holiday celebrations. His apartment became a second home where Emma and Ethan could express different aspects of their personalities while maintaining security about adult reliability and affection. The co-parenting relationship we developed surpassed our marriage in maturity and mutual respect. The most profound transformation involved my children's understanding of their own worth. Emma began expressing opinions confidently, requesting specific foods, activities, and friendships without fear of rejection or criticism. Ethan developed leadership skills in group settings, organizing playground games and classroom projects with natural authority that had been suppressed during months of diminishment. Their resilience taught me valuable lessons about recovery and human adaptability. Children who had accepted basement living with heartbreaking compliance transformed into confident individuals who expected respect and affection as basic rights. Their healing process reminded me that love should elevate rather than diminish support, rather than control and celebrate, rather than suppress individual worth. Emma's recent school presentation about family traditions included drawings of our apartment weekend adventures with Daddy and bedtime stories in rooms with windows. Her smile during the presentation reflected genuine happiness rather than performance for approval, showing complete integration of her improved circumstances into secure identity formation. Ethan's latest writing assignment described his bedroom as a place where he could think quietly, play loudly, and dream without interruption. His teacher noted the sophisticated emotional vocabulary he used to express contentment and safety, remarkable development for a child who had been nearly silent during his basement months. Our story continues unfolding with ordinary moments that feel extraordinary after experiencing their absence, family dinners without criticism, bedtime routines without shame, and morning conversations filled with possibilities rather than limitations. The basement experience taught us to treasure simple freedoms and never accept less than basic human dignity. If you have ever felt trapped in family dynamics that diminish your worth or your children's value, remember that you have more power than manipulation allows you to believe. Trust your instincts about unfair treatment, document concerning behaviors, and seek support from professionals who can provide objective perspective about your situation. Change requires courage, but staying in harmful circumstances teaches children that they deserve mistreatment and should accept whatever crumbs others offer. Breaking free from toxic family systems creates opportunities for authentic relationships built on respect rather than control, love rather than obligation, and growth rather than diminishment. Have you ever had to make difficult choices to protect your children from family members who should have been their greatest supporters? How did you find the strength to prioritize their well-being over family expectations? Share your experiences in the comments below because your story might encourage someone else who feels trapped in similar circumstances. Thank you for listening to our journey from basement banishment to beautiful beginnings. Please like this video if it resonated with your experiences, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share with anyone who might need encouragement to trust their parental instincts. Remember that you and your children deserve unconditional love, consistent respect, and the freedom to flourish in environments that celebrate your worth rather than question it.